With a blurred consciousness, he hears someone calling for him. As his vision clears, he sees a group of people at the mouth of Pitfall. One person is shouting his name while others are talking to a flying rabbit. One of them tells Sungwoo to not waste time as something is already behind them. He apologizes to Dawn and runs away, leaving him dead and impaled in the pit. Dawn rises and pulls out his spike, impaling him. He starts losing his senses due to blood loss and thinks about how everything began. The story begins when he was walking while on call and was suddenly summoned to a world called a dungeon. He wasn't alone at the destination, surrounded by numerous people who seem to have been in the same situation. Some are worried and irritated, some are intrigued with the situation. A sound welcomes them to the dungeon, and when he turns he finds Rabbit, who introduces himself as a guide to the game. He says he will explain about the game when an irritated guy walks up to it in anger while complaining. The rabbit says that he was trying to explain something important calmly and tells everyone to listen, ignoring the guy. The guy grabs the rabbit by the collar, still screaming at him. The rabbit begins laughing and feeling something off. Dawn tries to pull the guy back. The rabbit says to the glass guy that he will tell him an important rule of the game. The first rule is always be nice to the game guide if they want to live, while decapitating him with a swipe of his arm. People around began to panic and scream with death as they announced that there were 100 players left. Dawn, who was hoping it was a dream, finally accepted it was reality, looking at the death before him. The rabbit reintroduces himself and gives everyone basic equipment. Some kind of weapon begins appearing before everyone. And Dawn gets a knife. He floats above the people, tells them the equipment is free, and asks if they are ready to start. Without waiting for an answer, he tells them to survive and declares the dungeon game has started. With the attack of monsters and dangers everywhere, people kept dying. Someone kicked Dawn and asked him for the food he had. He tries to say to wait, as everyone was supposed to eat that, but he just tells him to shut up, saying one of the fighters was protecting him with no skill, and keeps berating him. After they got the equipment, they were given skills. Like in MMORPG, it was a manifestation of superpower. Many had a combat skill, but Dawn had gotten purification skill, which could only clean dirty things. It could be used to detoxify animal meat or monsters. He keeps berating Dawn when Sung walks in. He tries to make excuses, but he says that there was no exception and tells him to wait till the distribution time with an intimidating aura. He walks away cursing, and Sung asks Dawn if he is fine. He tries to console him, but he says he doesn't care. He told him to rest, and the guide had told them that tomorrow was the end point. The next day he trips a trap and runs away for a giant rock sphere roiling behind them. Dawn, who was following his vision, begins getting blurred as he runs out of breath when he falls into a pitfall. Sung calls for him as he looks at the pit, and the rabbit says the survival rate was 0%. With the rock sphere rolling behind them, he runs with others while apologizing. In the pit, Dawn hears the guide announcing that 10 people have survived and praises Sung for his performance. He hears an announcement of a boss, but due to his fading consciousness, the voices begin to disappear. He wonders if this is how it ends. On the surface, Sung finally beats the rock golem boss, and the rabbit begins congratulating, saying he hadn't expected them to knock down the final boss, and praises Sung for his part. Sung asks if they can return home, and the rabbit asks why he wants to go home suddenly and tells them to move to the next round. Sung asked what he was talking about. He had told them if they eliminated the last mission boss, the dungeon would be clear. The rabbit admits, but says that they had just finished the first stage and now they had to move to the next dungeon. He apologizes for not telling before and says the real game starts now. He begins taunting them. Hearing no reaction, he notices they are tired and heals them all as a reward for the stage, and says they can go to the next round. The healing effect of the rabbit reaches Dawn, who is fully healed from a near-death state. He is confused at first, but hears the rabbit telling the survivors to hurry to stage 2. He calls out to them but is left behind without being heard. While he contemplating what to do, he sees a notification saying dungeon reset. He notices the blood beginning to disappear in the air and the pit covered up again. He remembers the rabbit telling him there would be other participants. He waits for the next set of participants and opens up the pit cover. The moment he hears a sound, as he thinks about how to get out, he hears the rabbit. The rabbit asks if he is still alive, and he says he is about to die but has suddenly recovered. The rabbit is frustrated with the situation and begins mumbling, but Dawn stops him and tells him to send it to his friends. The rabbit tells him to open his status window and see the error in name. The rabbit tells him that the dungeon's law and considers him dead. Dawn asks if he wasn't a participant and if could he return home, but the rabbit tells him to die here, saying unrecoverable errors were quietly buried. He says it is unfair, but the rabbit says the rabbit wasn't the only thing that was reset and the sounds of monsters can be heard. He tells him to just stay there and dies as he flies away. The flash of times he has been looked down on passes, and he opens inventory to eat the food, promising to survive somehow. After a month of surviving, he looks at the opening. Even if he tries to climb it, the monster would have blocked the way, leaving him no way. After thinking for a bit, he takes everything and he decides to dig a tunnel to a safe place. After digging for a while, he looks behind and thinks the sand he dug up might get him buried alive. An idea flashes in his mind, and he wonders if he can put the dirt into his inventory. After he succeeds trial, he is happy as this would increase his speed and decrease the chance of getting buried. After digging and filling his inventory, he gets a notification of achievement and a new skill, relishing in the moment until he checks the skill and gets disappointed at it. Acquiring another non-combat skill, he wonders whether he was destined not to be a warrior, recalling Sung's skill and thinking he may have been a nuisance to him as his arm was severed while saving him. He activates his skill and dirt whirls and turns into a ball. Outside the tunnel, the rabbit looks at the and holds his head in frustration. Afterward, he smirks, saying he was just sitting for a time, and jumps in to see how far he has dug. He is surprised to see how far he has dug as he continues to follow the tunnel, not giving it much caution, but it's stumped again as the tunnel starts to get wider. As the rabbit is taking the surroundings, Dawn walks by and gives him an awkward greeting. The rabbit begins questioning him, but he just turns away, not sure how to answer, and the rabbit notices he has created a whole room for living. Dawn creates plates and serves the rabbit, but the rabbit is not amused with the situation. The rabbit questions him and asks what the skill he got was. Hearing the skill name, the rabbit begins to laugh and say he was specialized in strange things, bringing up his first skill in the talk as well. He jumps down the seat, saying Dawn can die now. Dawn asks if he is gonna kill him, but Rabbit denies it, saying he will die if he is left alone anyway. The rabbit walks away, saying it is over, which confuses Dawn. When the surroundings begin to shake, the rabbit announces that the next set of participants has cleared the dungeon. Understanding the implication, he begins running out of the tunnel as the rabbit laughs at his situation as he is nowhere near the entrance of the tunnel he dug. Dawn on the ground is close to giving up as the rabbit keeps taunting him, but the shaking stops. Dawn is confused, but hearing the rabbit saying the reset was over in a panic voice, surprised that the tunnel wasn't reset. The rabbit curses the error seed and asks if the reset didn't apply to him. Dawn begins taking the situation in and wonders if the error isn't affected by dungeon law, but he had gotten the achievement reward before. He concluded that he was in a position where he was a player and wasn't at the same time when the rabbit asked what he was thinking about so hard. The rabbit tries to frighten him, saying the next reset might collapse the tunnel or there was a huge monster down there, but Dawn isn't fazed and tries to confirm if he couldn't kill him. The rabbit denies, saying he could kill him but doesn't want to get his hands dirty, while Dawn just walks away, not believing him. The rabbit had the authority to kill only one and had no means to intervene directly. He is worried that if the guy goes outside, his mistake might be discovered, but he hears a sound in the wall to notices the cracks when water bursts in. Seeing a vein burst, rabbit is happy, being telling him to die. Dawn begins releasing the dirt in his inventory to stop the burst, but the rabbit just laughs at his attempt. He released all the dirt from the inventory, which stops the dirt for a moment, but it looks like it could break any section. After releasing that the dirt didn't have to change into a ball, he tried to change its shape. The blockage breaks, but in the last second, he is able to reshape the dirt ball into brick as he is underwater. After some time, he blocks the water burst, making a wall of dirt block. The rabbit looks at him, still not sure how he could have stopped the burst. Dawn asks the rabbit if he caused it, as nothing good has happened since he appeared. The rabbit stomps the ground, telling him to give up and die. The rabbit looks at the dirt dam he had made and thinks that the human is dangerous. Dawn begins calling him in excitement, and he goes to see a small pond was created. Doon says they won't have to worry about water in the future. The rabbit tries to discourage him, saying the water might be poisonous and he might be sick, but shuts up when he uses his purification skill. He looks at the pond in disappointment and decides to decorate it, but taking out dirt brick from his inventory and begins creating a small border surrounding the pond and makes a lion head on the wall as the highlight, calling it a lion fountain. He puts his arm inside the mouth of the lion and opens the hold so that water may flow from it. Looking at the skill, the rabbit calls it useless, but the Doon says it was science, pointing at the pipe which was connected to a water vein and lower the pressure so it wouldn't burst while also circulating the water. Doon asks if it was perfectly designed, and the rabbit says it was in frustration when an achievement pops up about the fountain he just made, surprising both the rabbit and him, as compensation is said to be fish living in the pond he built. With this he had food and water, thanking gods for helping him, and the rabbit screams at him to just die. After a while they return to the entrance of the tunnel to start grilling the food. He offers him food, but he adamantly denies it. Doon tells him to go if he isn't hungry, but the rabbit replies he will go after he sees him dead. Doon thanked him again as he was getting bored of eating the same thing over and over again. He gave him cooked meat, and the rabbit tried to keep a straight face but began drooling. He just screamed at him to keep the meat away and tell him he could eat everything. Doon thinks the rabbit wasn't eating it because it was herbivorous, but the rabbit denies he could if he wanted to begin bantering with each other. After having the meal, Doon sleeps as the rabbit just looks at him. He tells him to dream without caring or noticing that he has attracted the dungeon monster due to his cooking. In a cave without escape, he couldn't escape the monster and gives an evil smile, saying he hopes he likes his last supper. A monster boar walks up to him as he talks in his sleep. He begins sniffing Doon but is punched in the face by the half-asleep Doon. After waking up he notices the boar and begins sweating as if he is still dreaming, but admits he wasn't as soon as the boar charged at him. He tries to talk to it but realizes that it is just hungry and looks at it drooling. As he thinks he is fed up with the near-death situation, he remembers Sungwoo what had said while facing a similar monster. He wonders if he could do it as he was just in charge of crafting and didn't even have combat skill. He activates his skill to create a wall which he climbs as the boar charges through it. He tries to create a wall a few more times, but the boar keeps charging through it easily. After looking at it destroying the room, he opens the inventory and takes out the dirt and condensing it into a big dirt ball. The monster is scared, but Doon tries to throw it, but can't throw it far enough as it drops in front of him. The monster charges at him, but he runs away. He creates a platform as he is running, but is hit by the boar charges and falls down. He gets up in pain and wonders as he looks at the monster turn toward him. As tired to think of a way out of him, and looks at the boar and thinks if he gets it he could eat pork belly barbecue. He creates walls as the boar charge. Boar is able to easily break them and falls down the pit created right behind it. Doon, who is on a wall on the other side of the pit, opens his inventory as he complains to the boar and drops dirt balls on him, killing it. Rabbit, who saw it from far, is confused about what he just saw, questioning if he was a crafting class. Seeing how he used his dirt shaping skill, he thinks that he was dangerous. Skills were obtained when someone achieves certain conditions, and skills level up faster the more they use them. The rabbit looks at Dawn using his skill to understand why his skill was leveling up so fast. Dawn just notices the rabbit and calls him out, but the rabbit just floats there, cursing at him in anger. After taking out the rubble on the boar, he takes it back to its room and begins butchering it for meat. Dawn creates a pan using the boar bone and uses it to get oil from fat. The rabbit tells more monsters might come due to the smell, but he smiles, saying he already has a solution. He walks toward the center and begins reinstalling the spike as he reminds the rabbit about what he had said about the pit trap and tells if he uses the trap he won't have to hunt without a problem. The rabbit says that the monster wouldn't fall it so easily, but Dawn doesn't really care, saying he will eat, saying they might be caught again due to the smell. They feel tremors and look at the pit's opening to see a monster boar who jumps in despite the rabbit tires to tell it not to, dying to the spikes. Dawn starts drooling, saying he didn't have to worry about food, while Rabbit keeps cussing in frustration. Seasons change as another boar reaches the pit and jumps in, noticing the food. After being stunned due to the fall, he notices doing so is looking at it with a smile and welcomes his soon-to-be food. As he cooks his food, another one falls and dies to the spike. He looks at it without much unenthusiastic and approaches the boar when he suddenly gets a notification. In one of the other stages, Sung barely standing with blood-covered sword when his party comes to him and looks at the pile of monster boars. Other party members apologize for not being of help, but he says it was fine, saying he had gotten a reward and open status to show the skill he got for killing 100 monster boars. Everyone is amazed looking at the skill and its effect. As they are celebrating, he hears the sound and tells everyone to return to the cave as one of them calls, leaving the boars a waste due to its poison. He brings up that if they had Dawn would help, but stops when one of the party members scolds him. He says he didn't think he would miss him so much as he could only cook for them. Sung asks if he really meant what he said and tells them that fighting is the most appropriate thing, but as someone who couldn't fight, he fought for them in those dangerous times. Yoon apologizes and Sung says it is fine and begins heading back with the party. As Dawn is teasing the rabbit and they start bantering when another boar drops on the spike. He begins walking to the boar as the rabbit keeps screaming at him but is stunned when he starts carrying the boar's body. The rabbit asks how he could do it and Dawn says it was a normal skill and tells him about the vigor of the horned boar. The rabbit begins sweating hearing the skill name, knowing it was the reward of the horned boar slayer, and refuses to admit it. The rabbit tries to confirm the skill name and says that it would mean he had caught 100 boar. Dawn tells him he must have got 100 due to the trap. The rabbit is confused and asks how many times the dungeon had reset, but Doon isn't sure and asks what he is talking about. The rabbit says that the count reset with the dungeon reset and stage 1 had 40 boars. Doon just smiles, saying his count must keep accumulating even after the dungeon asks if it wasn't supposed to happen. The rabbit screams back that it wasn't. Doon wonders if it keeps getting accumulated, will he get the achievement if he catches 100 other monsters just to be berated by rabbit again? A squirrel who dropped the bones it was eating and noticed a crevice when he went to get it. He traveled the crevice to find a tunnel with a pile of bones at the end of the tunnel. Enamored by the pile of bones, he begins traveling back and forth until the next day he finds a bowl of bones on a human. He remembers an elder telling him to avoid humans. He tries to leave in silence, but the bowl of bones keeps tempting it, decides to eat the bowl, and Dawn looks at the squirrel happy with success. The squirrel notices that he is awake but doesn't run away. He slowly pats its heat when a notification of achievement appears. He wonders why this was happening so often as it didn't while he was with others. Looking at the name, he wasn't sure if it was worth it, but thought it was nice that he got a friend and named it Pokyu. Pokyu reacts to it and thinks the reward for achievement must be the squirrel understanding him and begins ordering him to check it. After checking, he asked for it the way it came in, and the squirrel began leading him, finding a way after digging. He had tried before but had always ended up finding rock blocking his way and was ready to give up. At the end of the tunnel, he finds a route to climb on and gets to the surface. Getting emotional, he is tearing up from reaching the outside when the sheep before him get attacked by the wolf and begins sensing a bunch of wolves behind him who run past him. He tries to ask Pokyu another way out when a wolf comes to him and begins growling. He goes back into the tunnel he recently had as the wolf follows behind him. He tries to use dirt and inventory to make a wall but is swiped by it. It could attack before he could build and could die with the next attack. He wonders if he could escape as it would easily outspeed him when an idea flashes on his mind. When the wolf attacks, he activates his skill as a blue aura surrounds him and sends it to the flying with an uppercut. He is surprised when the hit lands and is amazed at the skill effect. The wolf growls, ready to strike again. He is sure that he has dealt damage and begins running to keep fighting as the skill duration is running out. They both come at each other. Dawn suddenly changes direction but lands a hit from the side, striking repeatedly. The wolf attacks with 3 seconds left, which he dodges by jumping and bringing out a spike, and tries to stab the wolf on the head but misses, landing on neck as the wolf counters with a swipe, sending him to the wall. With the skill on cooldown, he looks at the wolf, knowing the fight won't be easy, as he understands its attack pattern, and the wolf jumps to bite him when he puts his hand in its mouth and unloads dirt in his inventory. After a while, the rabbit returns to find that he isn't cooking meat and checks to find him wearing bone armor and asks if he made it himself. The rabbit notices that the bone is of a grassland wolf and asks if he found a path to the surface. He replies he did, and the rabbit asks why he is still here and tells him to keep living here, trying to persuade him to stay. Dawn rejected it and said he would definitely get out, but he needed to prepare before that, as the only reason he didn't die was due to luck. He said he would be staying in there for a while he was making preparations, and the rabbit tried to dissuade him but he just laughed it off, looking at his reaction. He begins training his skill, as the more his physical stats were, the stronger the doubling effect would be, and with the increase in level the power increased with the duration, and cooldown also improved. After improving his skills, he finds 2 wolves. Ready to fight, he jumps into action, activating his skill, and throws the spike as a blue aura gathers around him. Another one jumps to him and he is ready to strike and send it flying. It jumps back into action, but he is ready to, knowing the throw wasn't enough, he lands a blow on it as well. The rabbit who is looking at him is just baffled as he keeps fighting. Dawn is basking in his strength and wonders if he has gotten unbelievably strong, but the rabbit informs him that Sung could beat 10 wolves in an instant. Dawn says everyone is weak compared to him, but Rabbit says the Yoon could take 3 by himself as well. The remaining wolf howls, calling its pack as the rabbit laughs. He asks if he could finish them before duration, telling him to show him his power. He laughs back, saying the advantage of the amplification of physical stat was that he can faster, and begin running, leaving the rabbit behind. The rabbit asks if he doesn't have any honor, but he just jumps back into the tunnel, saying he only had life, and bids him adieu. Usually, the participant gets obsessed with fighting and ends up dying. Angry, he commands the wolves to follow the hole, but finds it already covered up. He begins shouting as he trembles in anger. He had found the isolated ones with Pokyu's help and wasn't sure how to deal with it. He had made multiple escape routes and thought he could take more than 2 of them, but was careful in case something unexpected happened, and he failed to plug the entrance. Finding no other way than asking for Pokyu for help, he asks for it to search wolves who might have separated and warns it to not get too close as it runs off to find wolves. He finds 3 more wolves separated and opens inventory ready to attack when the rabbit calls him, strangling him. He begins taking out the dirt ball as they bat back and forth. He throws the spike, which misses, earning few taunts from the rabbit and a charge from wolves, but he keeps tossing more as the wolves close in. The rabbit keeps taunting, and as the wolves jump on him, he tosses the dirt ball. Rabbit isn't impressed until it hit the wolves mid-air and had more impact than he initially thought. Dawn tells him that he has used his skill to increase the density to max and weighs 20 kilograms each, and looks at the 2 wolves that were killed and searches for the third one when it jumps from behind him. The wolf lands a hit as the Dawn crashes on the ground. The rabbit cheers as the wolf goes for the finishing blow, but pauses when the wolf is unable to bite down and breaks its teeth. He feels relief as the bone armor made of the boar works. He does take some damage and sees a status window showing 8 seconds left. He creates a dirt ball and throws it full force. The rabbit looks in horror as Dawn keeps throwing dirt ball and spike till the wolf dies. He would use tunnels to strike any isolated wolves and train when every Pokyu told him they were standing guard near the holes, growing strong enough that grassland that wolves couldn't deal with him anymore. The rabbit berates him for his cowardly tactics, but he ignores it, checks his armor, and says he needs a replacement. He notes that his was quiet and thinks they should arrive soon as he hadn't killed all the wolves in the area. He notices the rabbit's expression and asks if he has really killed all the wolves in the area, and the rabbit floats away in a bad mood. He asks the rabbit for another player's location, but the rabbit denies it, telling him to look for them himself. Ready for the next step, he waited for the other player, as beating the boss alone wasn't possible, as it was 10 days since the last reset. New set of participants should be arriving soon, and hoped they didn't pass through here already. In a separate area, wolves are confronting new participants as the rabbit laughs, asking for a massacre. One of the participants is able to handle the wolf with the help of his skill, but it couldn't differentiate between ally and enemy, causing a few bystanders to get hurt. Others tell him to stop, but he keeps swinging, saying strong should survive. The rabbit looks at it happy, laughing, telling him to kill them all so that Error wouldn't be able to meet anyone. Not wanting to send Pokyu to search the forest, he thinks of building an observatory. Getting ready, he starts building one. He starts taking out dirt bricks, and after stacking them, he fuses them into one big pile using his skill so that it won't collapse easily. The rabbit observes the participants killing each other and some stealing from dead ones. The rabbit praises him until he points at something behind him to see an observatory, and floats to it to check out. On the top, he notices Dawn asking why he was building, saying he must have a lot of time, but he just smiles, saying it took 4 hours to build one tower, and tells him about achievement and skill, looking at him surprised. One of the skills let him see maps of the view seen from the observatory, and the other one he got after building 5 observatories decreased the time taken to make the observatory by half. Both surprise the rabbit and Dawn, teasing him as he thinks if he meets up with other humans he will turn it into a playground. He was certain he couldn't let him meet other participants and floated away upset, denying him the location of other participants again. When a few participants tries to reach the observatory, he tricks them into turning away, keeping the participants from meeting Dawn. He takes them through an easy route, stalling for time to kill Dawn for certain as the clock in his hand counts down. Dawn, who is exploring with maps, sees multiple monsters coming as the world begins shaking. Dawn stares down as a swarm of rats rushes by him. For weeks after the reset, the rats sweep across the Stage 1 region, destroying everything. He looks at the minimap and realizes that the reason the players weren't showing up on the map was due to them being either dead or having already arrived at the historic ruins. He thinks he could just go to historic ruins instead of trying to find them from the start. The group of players tense, facing down the stage boss, wondering how they should face a monster like that. A bulky guy tries to exchange blows with the boss to get killed immediately, and fear begins to grow among other players. As the player prays to God for salvation with a blast, his left arm falls off. Another player points toward Dawn, who just reached the place, brick in hand. Dawn understands that it must be the boss monster, and the other player runs as the boss strikes with a reformed left arm. Dawn throws a brick again, taking part of the monster's head just to regenerate again. The monster turns to him to attack, and as it closes and he remembers what Sung had told him and blows off the leg, making it fall. As it starts to regenerate, Dawn gets ready to toss another brick, but due to skill time up doesn't do any damage and panics as cooldown starts. The monster fully regenerates and starts striking, which he dodges and tries to throw the brick again to hit the golem, but doesn't affect it. The golem tries to defend in a hurry, even with a delay, confusing Dawn for some time. The monster begins attacking again, and other players look at it not knowing what they can even do. A female player runs toward the monster to defend and asks what she could do to help. He tells her he needs a minute, and she tries to say something when he points at the boss. The boss tries to punch and both player winch, waiting for the hit, but looks back to notice other players have started attacking, and one of them asks what they need to do. Dawn tells them to attack the solar plexus, remembering the weird reaction of the monster, deducting it must be its weak point. The female player shoots magic to reveal a core as the other player jumps to attack it together. The monster can barely protect itself, but its limbs are cut, and Dawn notes that it is formed of dirt and contemplates if his skills will work on it as well when the boss easily tosses the other players off. He begins running toward the boss, giving a thumbs up to the female player's question. His cooldown had ended earlier, and had asked for time to because he didn't know how to defeat it. He activated his skill and jumped high in the air and activated his Earth Lump skill to pierce through the golem, leaving a hole behind. The golem crumbles to the dirt and everyone cheers as Dawn's skill level up to 10. All the players cheer for him when the rabbit appears with a mixture of anger and fear of the current situation. Other players begin complaining to Rabbit to take them home as the rabbit just glares at Dawn, who is phased, and smiles at him. The rabbit is screaming at the player, saying that the game isn't over and they are to leave for the next stage and open up a gate to the next stage. The player begins to accept their situation, and the female player tells everyone to go through the gate, as staying there isn't going to solve anything. All players pass through the gate, leaving Dawn for last. He tries to walk through the gate, bidding the rabbit farewell, to just be stopped by the gate. He complains to the rabbit, but the rabbit informs him that the dungeon is rejecting him and he can't do anything. Dawn and Rabbit stand before the gate, not knowing what they are doing next due to the situation.
For more amazing videos, please like, share, and subscribe to support this channel.